Stephen Donziger, fantastic person. He's a lawyer, writer, and environmental advocate known for leading a 27-year legal fight waged by indigenous people groups and farmer communities in Ecuador. And it's a fight that resulted in a historic $9.5 billion judgment ordering Chevron to remediate its so-called Chernobyl disaster in the rainforest. And Mr. Donziger has spent more than 2 years in house arrest in his apartment in Manhattan after he refused to hand over his phone and his computer to Chevron. And he's with us now via the magic of Zoom. Here he is. Wonderful to see you again, Stephen.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be with you and honored to be invited to participate today.
You have the floor to share your keynote, and we are all ears.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure. I've spoken with this group from house arrest on 2 other occasions. I want to sort of come at this from the perspective of an on-the-grounds frontline defender, lawyer, and activist. I've worked in the Amazon of Ecuador on behalf of indigenous peoples and farmer communities for 28 years. I live in Manhattan. I've traveled there over 250 times. And I can be a witness, a firsthand witness, to say that had the ecocide law been in effect at the time the American oil company Texaco, now Chevron, went into the Amazon of Ecuador back in the 1960s, I think the calculation would have been different, and I believe thousands of lives would have been saved. What I mean by that is this. If you go back to the mid-1960s, the consciousness of environmental harm was not near at the level it is today. The campaign to make ecocide the world's 5th atrocity crime hadn't even gotten off the ground. And basically, when Texaco went in there, they made a conscious and deliberate decision to intentionally dump billions of gallons of cancer-causing toxic waste into the waterways and onto the lands, the ancestral lands of indigenous peoples. And over the 25 or so years that the company operated in this huge area of the Amazon, they dumped 16 billion gallons of this waste and left about 1,000 open-air waste pits dug out of the jungle floor. They put pipes in the sides and ran them into water sources that local groups and communities relied on for their drinking water, for their bathing, and for their fishing. Essentially, what Chevron did down in Ecuador was deliberately, out of pure greed, to keep their production costs at a minimum, create a mass industrial poisoning. Now, think about what those executives were thinking at the time they designed this system to pollute. They didn't even contemplate, I would guess, that they would ever suffer any personal consequences. Even human rights law, as evolved as it was at that time after World War II, mostly applied to governments and governmental officials acting in their official capacity. The idea that a private corporation would be subjected to human rights law, much less criminal law, for engaging in acts to deliberately destroy the ecosystem, where it would be clearly foreseeable people would die, as they have. That did not enter the decision-making calculus. And, you know, the ecocide law and the definition that Jojo just read is so well crafted. It can be, I believe, accepted by so many nations around the world and really, I think, quickly become international law. Would have, in my opinion, completely changed the equation such that the harm that has been visited upon 5 indigenous groups that I represent really might not have happened. And it seems to me that the people who are usually responsible for the decisions in these large oil companies and these large corporations that cause human rights violations to private individuals, they almost never get punished. To criminalize this behavior would again, completely change the equation. And like, obviously we are in crisis as a planet, and there's a lot of things that need to happen. I would say as a lawyer, as someone who's been on the front lines of this battle for many years, the most important thing, I would say the battle of our generation, or I should say your generation, I'm a little bit older now, but the battle of humanity legally is to make ecocide an international crime. And I would urge everyone, young people, people from different sectors, lawyers groups, to get behind this, just like the original atrocity crimes following World War II were able to generate a very quick international consensus. We cannot continue to allow major polluters like Chevron, Exxon, BP to continue to engage in acts that destroy our planet out of pure motive for profit without paying consequences, particularly when decisions are made to deliberately pollute, as happened in Ecuador. I also want to say that it's very important that those of us who do this work be protected. I have been put in prison and home detention for almost 1,000 days. By the way, I'm free now. That's over. It ended about 5 weeks ago on a contempt of court charge that was rejected by the regular prosecutor in the United States. And I ended up being prosecuted by a private corporate law firm that had Chevron as a client. Think about that, really think about that hard. In the United States of America, a rule of law country, a human rights lawyer got locked up by a private corporation, an oil company, acting in the name of the United States government. We cannot let that happen, not only in the United States, but in any country in the world. And I will say they also took my passport and have denied me my right to travel, which is one reason why I'm not personally in Stockholm today speaking to you directly. So there are a lot of elements that need to happen in terms of advancing the legal framework so it catches up to be able to hold accountable these companies that for far too long have operated with way too much legal impunity when they go about their extractive practices that are really hurtling us toward destruction and completely decimating indigenous groups who are the real frontline defenders of our planet. So I salute Jojo Mehta and all the people around the world leading the charge to make ecocide the next atrocity crime. I'm honored to be invited to speak. I salute everyone in Sweden. What a great country. What leadership you have shown on these critical issues. And also everyone who organized this event at We Don't Have Time. Thank you so much for doing what you do. And thank you for inviting me. I'm honored.
Thank you ever so much, Stephen. As you said, we had hoped to have you here in person, and it didn't turn out this time, but we hope we will see you later. And I personally did my thesis in Ecuadorian Amazon, and I was totally taken aback by, I thought I was going to the pristine rainforest, and instead I went into a fight against oil companies. So I think we all know that we are so grateful to you for your work and to the indigenous communities that you're working with. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much.